understand why death seemed like a blessing compared to what awaited for him, we have to take it back 3 years when a grieving, half-mad emperor first laid eyes on a teenage boy who looked exactly like his dead wife. What you are about to hear might be the most disturbing case of identity theft in human history. Somebody's name or fortune was not stolen or taken, but an entire person's existence, surgically erasing one life to resurrect another. Sporus basically became a living doll. Everything has been documented, and this is 1000% a true story. And it gets worse because everything that I'm about to tell you comes from the official Roman records. This story I'm about to tell you is so disturbing on all levels. And I want to leave it at that because there's so much to say, but I don't want it to come off wrong. But I will say this. This story right here is living proof that the rainbow community, in my opinion, has been around since the day a human has stepped foot on this planet. The moment humans were made, I don't care what anyone says, I don't give a damn what Bible you read. The rainbow community has always been here. They might have been hidden and not want to come out and play, but they were around. Oh yes. And it's so funny because back in the day, people were so into God and religion and this and that, but yet we had things like the story I'm about to tell you, things like that. In history, there has been so many incest stories, people trying to keep it within the family to keep, things going, the line of power. There's been so much effed up stuff that's been happening beforehand. I don't know why people are acting brand new like this shit just came about like today. People have been effed up since the beginning. Nothing. I'm just gonna leave it at that, and I will pinpoint stuff throughout, but I will also say this and then I will shut up. Even like shows like Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, Rome, Spartacus, if you notice something, there's one thing that they all have in common: the rainbow community and incest. You can't make me change my mind. Shit has been effed up since day one. I said it. So, before we get into this video, please remember to hit that like button. Please, 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 please hit that like button. Hit the button. Hit the goddamn button. And then when you're done with that, please go over and hit that subscribe button. Now, I already yelled at you about the like button, so just hit the a story. Hell of a story. The most powerful man in the world just became a murderer. Emperor Nero. Now, real quickly on his fun facts. Emperor Nero is primarily known for his controversial reign marked by extravagance, tyranny, and accusations of cruelty, including the Great Fire of Rome and persecutions of Christians. Now, the Great Fire of Rome, he was blamed for starting the fire that destroyed much of Rome, though he may have been away from the city at the time. They don't know, but people think that even though he was away from the area, does not mean he didn't have other people started. And then Nero is infamous for scapegoating Christians for the fire and initiating a brutal persecution campaign against them. He is described as a cruel ruler known for executing political rivals, family members, and anyone that perceived as a threat. You are out of here. He indulged in spending. Oh, this man loved to spend. In building projects and public spectacles. Often using the Roman treasury money, but he didn't care. He was a selfish person. It was all about him. While Nero's performance as a poet was popular with the common people, basically only people in the palace, others frowned upon by the Roman elites. They were like, you suck. Everyone else thinks your poems are great. No, we're here to tell you they suck. So anyway, that's just a basic about how cruel this man is. But anyway, back to the story. So, the most powerful man in the world just unalived his pregnant wife, and actually this was his second wife, and her name was Poppaea Sabina, and he had unalived her with his own hands in their private chambers. Now, some sources say it was a single kick to her pregnant belly. Others say it was a brutal beating. As sick as this man was, people believed one of the two. But then in other few articles, it has been written that she died of a brutal childbirth. But again, no historians believe that, and I couldn't even find any paperwork about this brutal childbirth. Like, what happened to the baby? Was it stillborn? Like, none of that stuff. So it was either, in my opinion, he either kicked her or it was a brutal beating. Either way, she was left hemorrhaging on the marble floor, just sitting there, just bleeding out. Now Nero suddenly realized what he had done and started screaming for physicians to save her, which they were not able to do. The woman who just died that day was not just any imperial wife. Poppaea Sabina had been Nero's obsession, his muse, his everything, the one person that could match his was this the gods only loved him, and then now he had an empire of millions of people that he overlooked. So when his wife died, he could not understand or wrap his brain around why this was happening to him. Things like this don't happen to a person like him. It was a personal insult from the universe to him. That's how he felt. After her death, he refused the traditional cremation. Instead, on having her body embalmed the right way. I didn't even know they had embalming back then, but they did. Instead of cremation, the body was embalmed with more spices than anyone has ever seen being embalmed in a dead body. He had her body dressed in her finest robes and placed in a crystal glass casket / coffin, whatever you want to call it, where he could just walk by and see her whenever he wanted to. Palace servants reported finding the emperor having full-blown conversations with his wife in that glass casket that was embalmed with more spices than they ever seen in a human body. It also been noted that he had been caught setting a place for her at dinner, asking her opinions on matters at hand. Sleep became impossible. Sleep became impossible without wine. He was heard screaming Papea's name, convinced that he could hear her calling from the next room. He had no interest in food unless it was prepared exactly how Papaya would like it. He ordered her personal chamber preserved exactly as she left it, down to the position of which her hairbrush sat on the table. 2 months after her death, Nero started seeing her everywhere in the faces of everyone. In young girls, young slaves, people who brought him the food. He just started seeing her everywhere. And so let's stop right here. This obsession, do you think it was because he really loved her, or do you think he was haunted by what he did to her? Or guilt or something, right? What do you think it is? Was it really love, obsession, or was he just messed up in the head? I don't know. But anyway, he started seeing her everywhere. He'll be talking and then just mid-sentence, just stop and run after someone and like grab their face and be like, "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were so-and-so. Oh, I thought I saw my dead wife. I'm sorry. Carry on." He was becoming unstable and mad. Now, Nero commissioned hundreds of paintings and sculptures of her, demanding artists to capture everything just right, capture her in the most beautiful light. Like, he just had to have it perfect. Of course, nothing was ever good enough for him, and so a lot of the artists were beaten, and half of them were put to death because they could not just get it correctly. But what he did next was insane. It was on a whole different level. You ready? was late 65 AD. A young freedman recently promoted to a minor clerical position was brought forward to confirm his new role. When Nero looked up, it was game over. The boy standing in front of him could not have been any more than 15 years old. But guess what? He had Poppeia's eyes. Not similar eyes, but the exact same enormous dark lashed eyes that captivated Nero from the moment he saw her. This boy had the same delicate bone structure, same frame. He tilted his head the same way his wife did. Nero jumped up and approached the terrified boy, circling him like he was his next prey, just circling him, just watching him, looking him up and down, just walking like, oh yes, oh yes, yes, oh, this will do, this will absolutely do. It was told that Nero had this manic look of joy, which someone would say is more frightening than rage. It was like something went off in his head, like that little light bulb. This is the part that I should tell you guys that honestly, we do not even know Sporus' real name, because Nero gave him the name Sporus to go by from the moment they met. But what we do know is that he wasn't just any, basic slave. He had been born into the imperial household. His mother, a German captive, died during childbirth. Raised by servants in part of the palace, he had a good education, just like the other children of Imperial. Sporus was trained in Greek, Latin, mathematics, and other things. Because he was bright and educated and intelligent, he was marked as bright, and so he was able to skip the manual labor and was better useful as administrative work. But here's the thing, Nero didn't give a shit about any of that. He didn't care if you were actual slave, a half a slave, if you were the child of someone rich. He didn't care about none of that. All he saw was this boy would do. Sporus had become a canvas for Nero's delusion. After Nero finished looking at this young boy up and down, he yelled for everyone to cancel whatever he had scheduled for the rest of the day, and that they better summon the personal physician right away. Tell them to prepare their finest chambers and their sharpest instruments. We have work to do. The transformation of Sporus. First step was to study Sporus to understand every way this boy could be molded into his lost love. So the first step was to just watch him walk, see how he walked, and then remembered how his wife would walk, right? So basically you would just watch him and write down notes on things that had to be changed if calculations and measurements. The emperor brought in his most trusted artist. They were ordered to study Sporus and create sketches. Oh god. Okay, so he brought in his trusted artists, and they were ordered to study Sporus and create comparative sketches, knowing where he matched the dead empress and where he differed. So basically, in my eyes, it's like find a difference. They would paint Sporus and then circle all the indifferences compared to Poppaea. Then he had Sporus speak for hours just so he can listen to his voice, correcting his pronunciation, teaching him the way Poppaea would say it. He had to learn to walk like Poppaea, stride like her, dance like her, stand like her, have her personality, her mannerisms, all of it. He was forbidden to use his real name, hence, which is why we don't even really know it. Servants were instructed to address him as lady or mistress. All of his clothes were thrown out. Anything that this young boy had was thrown out, burned, got rid of, and was replaced by all of Poppaea's clothes, even down to the color she liked. He was taught to apply makeup, and just not simple makeup, but like makeup like a noble woman would wear. Do y'all hear that thunder outside? And if we sit here for 1 second, could you just imagine what Sporus was thinking about? The things that must have been going in his mind. Because remember, he couldn't say it out loud. But he was probably like, what the fuck is this crazy man doing to me? 1 minute you're yourself, the next minute you're transforming into someone else's dead wife. Servants also reported that during this time that he barely spoke, barely ate, and moved through life like it was a nightmare. But he did not resist or say a word because he knew his life depended on it. But now Sporus knew exactly Nero's plan, and he didn't like it. And he knew Nero's plan because guess what? Nero did not hide it. In fact, he spoke about it openly, excitedly, like he was proud that he was resurrecting his wife's innocence. The physicians had been in talks. They had been going through their medical books or whatever they did back then, because it was a done deal and it was happening. Sporus. One moment. Sporus was going to be physically transformed into a woman through castration and surgical modification. So, you see, in the beginning, I did not want to misspeak, but this is the first part that I need to jump in here. So for me, is this the first human, whether he wanted to or not, transitioning? You know, when people transition, they go from a male to a female, or a female to a male, whichever your preference is. But is crazy. So again, those tendencies, look, let's continue. And so, in simple terms, they wanted to cut off his pee-pee. Oh yes, rip it right off. It's so funny because in my notes I have written down here, again, any show you watch, Game of Thrones, House of Dragon, Rome, the Borgies, the Tudors, I forgot to put that in there, Spartacus, there was someone from the rainbow community in there. So you can't make me think any different. I know it's a TV show, but this shit has been happening for years. Now, this whole surgical procedure is crazy, and it was crazy because remember, physicians back then never did shit like this. Like ever. It was never even talked about, right? I can't believe they did this to this poor kid. This wasn't just removing masculinity. This was attempt to make this boy into a woman. Period. Oh God. And again, I'm stuck on it because, okay, let's talk about it real quick, right? So, gay lovers might have been something that was happening back then, but this whole transitioning thing, this is the first of the first. So I can just imagine these doctors looking at one another and saying, what the fuck are we supposed to do here? But in all fairness, the physicians probably did not have a choice either. It was probably life and death for them as well. And whether the doctors thought it was unethical or maybe they couldn't do it because of the Bible or the religion, again, Nero didn't care about none of that. If you did not do what he told you to do, game over, along with your family at that. Not just you, but yeah, everybody in your family. The night before the surgery, though, Nero visited Sporus in his chambers, bringing him with him a small wooden box, and inside that small wooden box was a ring, Poppaea's ring, her wedding ring, a massive emerald surrounded by pearls. As he was putting this ring on Sporus's finger, he said, "Tomorrow you will be reborn. You will become who you are always meant to be, and I will love you as I loved her." Just real quickly, you know why this is disturbing on many levels? Because, like, if you wanted a female like your ex-wife, you could have had your peoples steal or capture or kidnap, whatever word you want to use, all the females in land, and you could have found someone that looked like your wife. But no, instead you take a boy and try. I'm so stuck on stupid because the amount of power this man had. Why not just go find, you know what? This shit really makes me question people's sexuality back then. But anyway, Sporus finally spoke and said, asked, "Will it hurt?" Do you know what Nero's response was when he asked, "Would it hurt?" Do you know what he said? Do you know what this man said? He said, "Birth always hurts, but what emerges is beautiful. I swear, I feel like responding for Sporus and be like, well, if that's the case, bitch, you get your dick cut off. I swear. Oh boy. Yeah, I would have been beheaded. I know. I'm too mouthy for this error. I'm not. Anyway, the surgery was held the next day. The exact details we do not know. So we don't know if they ran into issues, but we do know this was their first procedure ever. But we don't know if it was simple for them, or we don't know any of that stuff. We do know, though, that it lasted for hours. And we do know that there have been screams being heard through all the corridor walls. I just remember, they didn't have like medicine like we do nowadays. They didn't have propofol, anesthesia. They didn't have none of that. So this poor boy went through this shit. Nero waited outside, pacing back and forth like he was expecting to hear, "It's a boy." As Sporus' screams got louder, Nero was outside shouting encouraging words like, "It'll be okay. In the end, it'll be something beautiful. You got this. You got me. I love you. Shut the fuck up." The recovery took months. Infections were consistent. Remember, no antibiotics back then. The surgery was so botched that Sporus had to relearn basic functions. But through it all, the Emperor was right there with him, helping him with the recovery, helping him with whatever pain meds they gave back then. He was changing bandages. He was really taking care of his girlfriend, I would say. It was like he had to make sure that his creation was perfect. And during the recovery, Nero would read to Sporus Poppaea's favorite poems and told him stories so Sporus could remember them. Remember, he is turning this young man into his wife. This is so disturbing on so many levels. As Sporus recovered, an army of tutors were there with him this entire time. So he had education as he was, recovering, because remember, he had to be just as smart as Poppaea was. Now, the surgery also forced him to learn how to walk again, and because of the surgery, he had to learn how to walk in smaller steps. And even if it was not for the surgery, although it was, he still had to learn how to walk like a female in smaller steps. But because he was botched all down here, yeah, he had to learn how to walk again. Now we're back to training. Now he's recovered. Now we're back to training. He had to learn certain gestures. He had to learn how to hold the pen like Poppaea did, or like a royal would, right? He had to learn how to drink from a cup, with the one pinky up. He had to learn hand softer tones. He had to learn to laugh like her. He had to memorize her favorite phrases, her favorite books. He even had to learn different locations where they used to live. Even down to how it felt to be pregnant. This shit is creepy as fuck. He had to wear all of her jewelry. Had to learn how to address the servants like royalty. Had to learn how to engage at dinner parties like her. He was required to study her entire history from the moment she was born, her childhood. Had to learn everything that happened throughout the marriage. He had to memorize everything. So just in case Nero spoke, Sporus can jump in like he was there. Had to memorize her friends. Had to memorize her favorite food. Again, all of this just in case Nero at some dinner party wanna reminisce. This whole thing was just disturbing at its finest. But if you think it gets better from here, it does not. And then I think for me the whole makeup part was insane, because he had to do her eyebrows like her, use the same foundation at her, whether it matched or not. It was like he had no say so into anything. The first public appearance came about 6 months after the surgery. Nero was having a small dinner party just for his closest advisory and their wives. The moment that Sporus walked into the room, everyone froze. Everyone stopped. Whatever people had in their hand, if they're about to drink, it was like, yeah, nobody could move. If you're about to eat something, you were like, everyone froze. Everyone stopped in mid-sentence. Sporus walked in dressed in one of Poppaea's distinctive purple gowns, dipped out in all her jewelry, wearing the exact makeup that she would wear. Many have heard the rumors, but to see it in person was something completely different. People were so thrown off because the resemblance was too perfect, insanely perfect. The way he walked, the way he tilted his head, even the way he smiled was exactly like Poppaea's. It was so much like her. At times, people forgot it was not her. This is so disturbing on so many levels. I'm gonna keep saying that. And guess who was smiling from ear to ear somewhere in the fucking corner? Crazy ass Nero. Cheesing from ear to ear like a proud artist revealing his masterpiece. He kept one hand possessively on Sporus throughout the entire evening, introducing him as his beloved Sabina, using Poppaea's family just weird. But don't get it twisted. There were people who weren't going along with this foolishness at all. It's actually documented that some people were really uncomfortable. They mentioned no matter how he walked, no matter how much makeup he had on, he was still a man. They even noted that no matter how much creams he would use, his hands were still big like a man. Even though he was petite like Papaya, he still had masculine broadness in his chest and shoulders. My foot's falling asleep. We have to remember that this was the first time that many people were seeing something like this. More heartbreaking is no matter how many times he practiced a female's voice, there was times when his own voice came through. It's like when people are whispering, sometimes, our voice comes through or whatever, or you guys get it. So, could you imagine you're supposed to be talking in a female's tone and then your manly voice, peeks through whether you want to or not. And sometimes, his own personality would shine through. And the people that witnessed this said it was really, really sad because deep down, Sporus was a sad young kid that was in this situation that he should not have been involved with. But overall he was very smart or whatever, but when he did mess up and his personality did shine through, he would fix it fast, because not playing the role meant punishment. And it probably would not have been physical abuse, but more like psychological torment, meaning Nero would become distant and withdrawn. Nero would threaten to find a better Papaya if he couldn't perform the right way, leaving him to the streets with nothing. And if you don't do this, I will have you thrown on the streets, and who's gonna want you? You know how abusers do. Well, you probably think it can't get any worse than this. But it does. It absolutely does, because you know what happened next? The wedding announcement. You didn't think that was coming? Shame on you. Yes, the wedding announcement. The wedding announcement that shocked even those who were with the nonsense, right? So there was people in the palace, like physicians and everyone else, thought, the emperor was mad. Okay, well, we're cutting off his pee-pee, but okay, we're putting makeup on him, okay, but now the wedding invitation, it was like, okay, now this is going too far. Yep. Way too far. So now we're in the early 67 AD, and he did announce this wedding announcement and was bragging about it like this shit was normal. Like, she said yes type of thing, and I'm the luckiest man in the world. He was bragging like this was normal. The ceremony would be a full state occasion with all the traditional Roman rituals. He was treating this like this was a proper, legitimate marriage. See, the rainbow community marriage is accepted in 2025, right? And it took us a long time also too, at that time too, I don't know, well, we know that gay people, it wasn't something that was open like at all. This was something that people would not come out the closet for, like, So back to the wedding, everything was going as planned, down to the feast, the wedding dress, the priest, invitations were sent out, even to political people, even if no one agreed with it, whether it was for religious purpose or whatever reason you had. Saying no to this wedding was not an option. Again, declining was not an option. The day of the wedding, Sporus was dressed in a traditional saffron color veil over. He had on a saffron colored veil of a Roman bride, his face painted with cosmetics like a bride. Contracts were signed with some legal language used for any marriage. This, again, they're going along with this like this is normal. And as you probably guessed it, Nero was the groom and Sporus was the bride. They said their traditional vows, all of it. Nero even carried Sporus over the threshold. I can't. This poor kid. And the sad thing about it is that no one, the guest, the priest, or Sporus, anyone that did not agree with this, too bad. Too bad. There was nothing they can do about it. The wedding was lavish beyond description. All the food you can possibly think of, wine, entertainment, musicians, dancers, all of it. Throughout all of it, the Roman elite maintained their frozen smiles and offered their congratulations. Again, no one would dare to say anything. Gifts poured in, jewelry for the empress, household good for the imperial couple, even fertility prayers, which was either dark humor or a desperate attempt to please the emperor. I don't know, but giving fertility prayers. And then they also gave them like a fertility like something that was blessed. I'm not sure if it was like a rock or emblem or something like that, but whether it was a rock, a prayer, or whatever, y'all know these were two men. What are you out here praying for fertility for? I don't get it. Senators gave speeches praising the beauty of the bride, the happiness of the union. Behind all of it, though, nobody was fooled. Everyone knew exactly what was happening, and everyone knew this shit was wrong and fucked up. Period. And not even fucked up, but it was a violation of Roman values, natural law, and most importantly, human dignity. Remember, this is not something that Sporus wanted. This was Nero's sick way of not letting go of his dead wife and basically try to resurrect her innocence. But we all know once something is gone, it's gone. Anyway, real quickly, if you made it this far in the video, please give me, let's give me some blue hearts, so I can know who possessions, servants who served the real Papaya. Think about them. It must have been awkward for them as well. He's waking up having to be her every single day, and servants that actually served the real Papaya must have been like confused and conflicted as well. But again, he woke up. He had to be styled and dressed in her clothes, her hair, makeup, every gesture, the walk, expression, the way he ate, held the cup, every day, in and out, 24/7. He no longer had his identity. That has been completely erased. The worst was probably the public appearances. Nero insisted on taking his new wife everywhere, to the theater, religious ceremony, political stuff, the races, entertainment, everywhere. Sporus sat in the empress box at the Colosseum, was carried in the emperor's litter through the streets, received look. And so it was one of those, I'm uncomfortable, but so what, let's go. I don't care if people look at you like a freak in the street. I don't care. Let's go. And just like now, there was nosy people back then, eager to get a peek. Like this was the effing circus. And look at the freak show. Oh, there were people pouring in, begging to work for the palace. They were coming to every church ceremony. People were just being nosy as hell. And then it got even worse. Nero had priests pray for the couple in church, in front of everybody, and have everybody bow their heads and say, okay, let's please bless this couple with children. We're back to the fertility nonsense, aren't we? Knowing damn well that's impossible, and we out here wasting a prayer on something that we know that cannot happen. And while we're on it, let's talk about the intimacy part of all of this. Oh, y'all know that was coming. Not only did Nero expected him to respond to intimacy as a woman, take that as you wanted, but you would have to do sex exactly how Papaya would do it, how she would get on top, all her moans, how she likes certain things, how she would give oral. He would have to learn it all. He would have to ooh and ah in bed, just like I can't. This is wild, and any mess up could send Nero into a violent rage or worse. Cold disappointment that felt like death itself to someone whose survival depended entirely on pleasing a sick fuck. Now the other members are, employees in the palace, like the servants and stuff, treated Sporus with a mixture of pity, fear, and disgust. And honestly, I think all three are valid. Because for me, right, it's not disgust towards actual Sporus. It's disgust on the entire situation, right? Pity, you feel bad because of what he's gone through. Fear, you can't show that, and any type of sympathy might get you killed. And disgust, this entire situation was messed up. Now, there were some escape attempts, but in the end, where could Sporus really go? He tried, but then he would get halfway out and realize there's nowhere where he can go. He would be recognized everywhere. He was the talk of the town. He got his penis cut off. He was wearing makeup. All of his raggedy ass clothes is gone. He's dipped out in jewels and stuff. He had nowhere to go, and people would know who he is. And the one attempt that was actually documented on file, well, people did try to help him, but then they were all captured. And Nero, the accomplices that tried to help his bride get away, oh yeah, they were tortured, and I know they were killed. Either way, it happened right outside Sporus' window, and he was forced to watch the people who tried to help him, the accomplices, be killed. He had to watch it. He was forced to watch it, but nothing happened to him. But him watching the execution of those that helped him was enough. Yep. As time went on, Sporus would act like Poppaea without even a thought. Today we recognize that as severe dissociative disorder. He literally began referring to himself as Poppaea. He didn't know who he was anymore. He was brainwashed, completely brainwashed. Servants reported finding him having conversations in the mirror, speaking in two voices, his own, his regular voice, and then the voice of Poppaea. Again, Norman Bates 2.0. Then came the spring of 68 AD, when Nero's world began to crumble. Rebellions erupted across the empire. The Senate declared him an enemy of the state. Nero was abandoned. As Nero fled Rome with only a handful of loyal servants, Sporus was amongst one of them, of course. Even facing death, the emperor could not leave behind his beloved Sporus, aka his dead wife. Those final days in the villa outside Rome were pure madness. Nero alternated between plans for escape and preparations for suicide. But through it all, Sporus remained by his side, playing the devoted wife. Witnesses describe Nero clinging to Sporus, calling him his only love, my resurrection, begging for them to die together like this is some Romeo and Juliet. When news came that capture was imminent, Nero finally chose death. Nero pressed a dagger to his throat with trembling hands as Sporus helped him guide it through his neck. Then Nero was gone. With Nero dead, right, you would think Sporus' nightmare would be over, right? Nope. Instead, he entered a new phase. He was now a living symbol of a new ruler. The people fighting for the throne each saw Sporus differently, as a trophy, as curiosity, maybe keeping him as the empress, or just an object of fascination. First up, Galba, the elderly general who briefly claimed the power. He treated Sporus with cold courtesy, keeping him in the palace but largely ignoring him. For a few months, Sporus lived a strange twilight existence. died 7 months before he was murdered. His successor, Otho, who had known Poppaea personally. In fact, she had been his wife before Nero stole her. So Otho was Poppaea's ex-husband, and then Nero stole her. So Otho's interest in Sporus was therefore particularly disturbing, right? Did he see his long lost love in this boy? Historians suggest that Otho treated Sporus as a legitimate widow, even promising to marry him. So again, this is why I'm saying the rainbow community has been around for ages, right? Because the fact that Otho fell in love with Poppaea, a woman, knowing that this kid here is actually a man and didn't care he was gonna marry it. He liked the thought of a boy becoming a man with makeup, and he was down for it. So again, these feelings for the rainbow community has been around for ages. So Otho was going to marry him, but guess what? He didn't make it that far because he unalived himself after losing the next battle. Then Sporus was passed on to the winner, Vitellis, and it was under Vitellis that Sporus' story reached its final chapter. Vitellis was a different type of monster, different kind of emperor. He was cruel, gluttonous, cared nothing about anybody but himself, didn't care what nobody thought, didn't care what they said, didn't care about shit. To him, Sporus was neither a person nor a valuable object. Instead, he thought of him as some source of entertainment. Yeah, ready for this last one? Vitellis announced that Sporus would perform in a public spectacle in the Colosseum, not as a specter in the imperial box where the empress is supposed to be sitting, but as an actual participant in the game. He had to perform and basically put on a play. He was forced to reenact the myth of I think our name is the myth of Prospina, the maid abducted by Pluto to the underworld. And in the fatal performance, he would be abducted by gladiators dressed as demons, and then subjected to a public, brutal raping before being killed. This was the entertainment. This is what Sporus' last moments were supposed to be. When Sporus heard this, he was like, oh hell no, I'm choosing death on my own terms. His method is debatable. Some say poison, some say he might have did some things, to his wrist. But finally, at approximately 20 years old, he was finally at peace. His ordeal was finally over. He did it. He ended his own life. It's so sad that at the age of 20, he was forced into all of this. Nobody really got to know him. Nobody really got to know the real him. He didn't even know the real him. And the worst part about this entire story is that there were so many people involved, down to the servants, the physicians, the surgeons, who else? Roman elites, this story alive if we can for Sporus, because without us, many people would not even know that he existed. So, just messed up. Anyway, let me know your thoughts down below about this story and what's next. I will be missing from YouTube for 1 week. I am going on vacation, but when I get back, what are we doing?